Okay, now we're going to take a look at the laws of the oceans and waterways dealing with boundaries between nations. So if you look at your study guide, we've got four terms here. You've got the high seas, which is open waters of the ocean, or it's beyond the limits of the territorial jurisdiction of any country. So it means those waters are open to everybody. So we call them the high seas, or another way of saying international waters. Territorial waters, the area of sea around a country's coast recognized as being under that country's jurisdiction, set up 12 nautical miles, and it was done in 1982. Here's the point: the word jurisdiction means sovereign control. It's within that country's power, and that country can say to other countries, you're not allowed here. For instance, if you go to Cannon Beach, Oregon, and you look at the ocean, that is American waters. Any nation ship, any ship from another nation that is found there needs permission by the United States government to be there. This is why we have the Coast Guard. United Nations Convention of Law of the Sea, or UN clause, is a code of maritime law approved by the United Nations in 1982 that authorized territorial waters to extend 12 nautical miles from shore and a country's EEZ to extend 200 nautical miles. An EEZ is an exclusive economic zone, a Z zone over which a state has special rights over the exploration and use of marine resources stretching 200 miles from its coast. So certain nations have been recognized having EEZ zones, and this was set by the United Nations. So again, this often includes fisheries. It could deal with mineral, oil, and all of that. So you've got four really important terms to look at as far as maritime. Okay, now dealing with water boundaries. So you saw the four other terms there. Now we have something called the median line principle. And basically what this is, and it's an approach to divide and creating boundaries at the midpoint between two places. And let me demonstrate. If you take the state of Washington, and then up here you've got Vancouver Island, and you've got Canada up here. Well, there's areas here that don't go past 12 miles, and you could have some issues here of boundaries. So what we basically done, you take the median line principle and you split the difference, and you do the boundary line there when you have two countries that are very close to each other. And in this sense, that's what the median line principle. So whenever you see the median line principle, it's usually over waterways. That where you have two nations very close. Like let's say you have nation A here. And I'll go ahead and give you this. Here's England, here's Ireland, here's France. Okay, there's about 20 miles difference in the English Channel. Well, if each country claimed 12 miles, that would be 24 miles. It's not enough. So what they do is they split the difference between the two of them. And that's the median line principle. Okay, now we come to an area of the world on dealing with the oceans, in which who controls the Arctic. And what we've got here, just a couple of things if you look at this map from the New York Times. The Arctic is not land, it's ice. It's ocean, the Arctic Ocean. So there's no land at the top of the North Pole. And so basically what you've got is the shaded orange areas. You have areas in which you could find large amounts of possibly natural gas and oil, minerals. Okay, you can see this here is where there's current oil production and exploration. Now you've got this area here, established boundaries of Arctic territorial waters. So you've got the exclusive economic zones of different countries, which they have the right to explore here. Now, the area right here, and I'm going to go ahead and change the color here to blue. This area right here is the contention. No one has a claim. So the question is there large amounts of minerals and everything like that? And this area of the world, it's high seas. Yet the nations that are surrounding here are beginning to understand that there could be a huge possibility here. So therefore, what you've got going on here is contention in the Arctic. International waters beyond the EEZs of these different countries. Okay, now we come to another issue that's a hot spot right now, is you have China up here. Let me go ahead and change this back to red. You have China up here, you have Vietnam here, and you have the Philippines right here. And what you've got going on right now is you've got China are taking areas here and they are creating new islands in the South China Sea. And the question comes down to is why would China do such a thing and why is this going to be a problem? So I'm going to explain this as we go a little bit further in a few slides, but to let you know where the area is. So on the planet, what you've got right now is you've got the North Pole and now you've got the South China Sea are an area of conflict. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at why China's doing this and what exactly and how it's doing this. Well, first of all, what China's doing is they are basically taking submerged reefs and they are taking ships and they're pumping sediment up and they are basically filling this sediment up, thus creating new islands in the South China Sea. Now, look, they are destroying the environment and they're wreaking, all kinds of havoc on marine life as they're doing this. And then up here you can see exactly what they're doing. Now the question comes down to is why would China do this? Well, here's your answer. Part 7 of the UNCLOS, which we already covered, specifies that rocks which cannot sustain human habitation or economic life of their own shall have no exclusive economic zone or continental shelf. Under this provision, even if China were to gain control over the Spratly Islands, its control would be limited to 12 nautical miles of territorial waters without accompanying EEZ. So basically what that's saying is these islands cannot contain any life or any economics. They do China no good in the sense of it's not going to include that EEZ. Remember, that EEZ can go 200 and some miles off and give them all kinds of mineral rights and things like that. If, however, China can create islands on top of previously submerged features and create conditions for these new islands to sustain human habitation, then China would have strongly bolstered its claim in the South China Sea. This is exactly what the Philippines object to. In an interview with the BBC report, Department of Foreign Affairs spokesman Charles Jose called China's claims of the South Sea outrageous, excessive, and without basis under international law. He also accused China of trying to change the status quo to strengthen its claim before the arbitration court hands down its rulings on the Philippines case. So China is trying to say, we've got these islands that can support life and economics, therefore there are islands, therefore we have an EEZ. And I'll show you real quick on a map what they're trying to do. So again, if China builds up islands here, and they are Chinese territory, then they can claim an economic zone, an EEZ, all the way out here. And if they get this economic EEZ here, then they are going to gain massive amounts of rights and everything. This is going against what the Philippines are trying to do, and also what Vietnam is trying to do. So what you've got is you've got an area in which you have the new superpower of China exerting its control by doing these basically built up islands, which are having all kinds of environmental problems and everything. So again, as you look at these terms and you look at these two issues, you get the idea on human geography where the oceans are, what countries control what, 12 miles out. Some countries have EEZs. Those without board 12 beyond 12 miles or EEZs are international or high oceans, high seas. Two conflicts areas would be the Arctic and the South China Sea.